Today at the shop, we'll be changing the oil cooler on a Dodge Caravan. First step will be to remove the air cleaner. Can be a little bit difficult to remove. Then there's a secondary piece that connects to the throttle body. Pull that upper radiator hose off from its retaining clip. And then there's two bolts for the mounting bracket on the front of the intake plenum that you want to remove. And there's also a mounting bracket at the rear of the intake plenum. Several nuts and a small metal bracket that needs to be removed there. Now you can move on to the intake plenum bolts themselves. Remove each of those. And then once you have them all loose, you can go ahead and remove that plenum assembly. Okay, now we can move on to disconnecting the electrical connectors for the fuel injectors, because we also need to remove that lower manifold section to get at the oil cooler below. These oil coolers are a fairly common issue on this engine. Definitely good to keep an eye in there, look down in the engine valley and see if it's leaking oil or not. Okay, and there's one bolt to remove to get that lower air filter housing out of the way. It's a good idea to get any kind of leaves or any other debris out of there. Okay, now we moved on to the lower intake manifold bolts. And now we can remove that lower section. Again, it's a good idea to clean any junk that's gotten down in there. Try to keep that from going down in the intake runners. There'll be one coolant hose at the back of the oil cooler that you'll need to remove. Once you pull that hose off, you're going to lose some coolant. So you can see there he's using a suction hose to get that coolant out of there. And then next we will remove the oil cooler itself. Once all the bolts are loose, that oil cooler can be removed. And you're going to want to clean that area, get ready for the new oil cooler. Now this part has been updated at least once, maybe several times by Chrysler. So make sure you're getting the latest updated part here. You're going to torque these bolts to 7 to 9 Newton meters. Now we can go ahead and clean the intake ports to reassemble the lower intake. You're going to want to change the gaskets on that lower intake section, and then torque those bolts again to 7 to 9 Newton meters. Next, we can reconnect all of those electrical connectors. And then we can reinstall the intake plenum. Again, you'll want to put new gaskets on that plenum. Make sure everything's lined up. And then go ahead and tighten all of those bolts down. There's 7 of them, and they are, again, to 7 to 9 Newton meters. Next, you want to reattach that rear mounting bracket. And there's also a couple electrical connectors on that end. That will come up to the throttle body. And then you want to reinstall those 2 mounting bracket bolts on the front. You can reinstall the intake filter housing and the air intake tube assembly. Recheck for leaks, and you are all done.